All right, everybody, we can go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for hopping on because it's a nice day out there. I'd rather be outside than in the office. But today I wanted to um, review kind of a human behavior session and about, reasons why people behave the way they do, whether they're buyers, sellers, etc. And before I do that, I did send out a couple of things this week that I wanted to remind you of. One is the new application from Allegiance Title called Title Pro 24/7. So this is for those of you in certain cities that used to have Remine, more or less a replacement for that. DFW is one of the cities where they discontinued Remine. San Antonio never had it. So just FYI, I did send out instructions on, where to click the link and get this. And you will need a token or a code, and I believe it's Amy B. Um, so if you have any issues, let me know. It's an Allegiance Title thing, but I'm more than glad to help you. It is free until you start downloading contact information, and it's like 50, 60 cents a contact, but it's a great farming tool. And within that link, there are videos that will give you kind of an overview of how to use it. So if you still need a link or the communication I sent out, just let me know, and I'll be glad to do that. The second thing is that a day or so ago, I sent out an email regarding a relationship that I have struck with a company. She's actually in Florida, but she does work for me on behalf of the brokerage and some other agents within White Rock. And she will post, she'll really pretty much handle all of your posting on social media. She's very, very affordable. I think she's got two plans, 99 bucks a month and 149 bucks a month. And she'll post everywhere. She creates the content. And the link that I sent out actually outlines exactly what is included. And it is a month-to-month commitment. It is not a contract. So if you wake up one morning and don't want to do it anymore, that's cool with her. But I have had some pretty good success there. People that are fans of the page or connected with me personally know what she's been posting out. So it's pretty frequent, pretty robust. So if you were looking for someone to just kind of hand that off to, she is a good option. And don't forget that we also, in that same light, do have a transaction coordinator that we contract out with. And her name is Crystal. She's been with us for many, many years. She's very reliable. And if you need, maybe you're a dual career agent, maybe you just don't want to do the paperwork, but she will take the paperwork from contract to close, put everything in back agent. She knows all of our systems, and she's pretty affordable as well. And then the last thing I'll mention is don't forget, we also have a website that you can get for your business. It's 15 bucks a month. That is also a month to month. And it connects with whatever local MLS you're a member of, so that as people are searching online for homes on your website, it is as if they're in the MLS. So there's no delay on statuses of homes like there is in Zillow. The reason I wanted to bring this up was two reasons. One is that it does come with its own companion CRM system, which is just a customer relationship management database. You can email market out of that system and do all sorts of stuff. It's very simple, but it gets the job done, and that is included. So if you are kind of at a loss for which system to go with, it's a pretty low risk proposition. But the woman that I sent out the information on for social media help, she knows that website. So she's very familiar with Playster as a company. And so now you can always hire Playster to do stuff for you as well. They're pretty affordable. But if you want to kind of bundle in your social media and your website into a kind of a one-stop shop type of deal, Shelly is the person that is the social media guru that I've subbed out to. So just be mindful that if you ever want to get a website, have someone deal with it. She's your person. All right. Um, so moving on to the content. So I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about this today because I think it's important as we navigate through whatever fallout there's going to be from the NAR settlement. And just, I mean, even though that may have never happened, it's spring, it's about to be summertime. We're going to be, interacting with a lot of different clients and prospects. And I think it's important to set expectations for yourself in terms of how those interactions might go. So, why is this important? Well, what I'm about to discuss with you is by no means a personality assessment, like a disc profile or a Myers-Briggs test. We're not going to go down that road. It is just merely a handful of specific traits and how people behave that can help you in your business. And so anticipating how someone will behave or react takes the guesswork out of how we will behave and sets our own internal expectations. I mean, I can't tell you how many realtors are surprised that a client will behave a certain way, even if it's their 50th transaction. But it really is all part of human nature based on this whole process. It also keeps us on our game and forces us to be more proactive. And so I'm going to go through, I think, 9 of these things. And the more we're aware and can anticipate how someone might behave, it really helps us become more expert at dealing with them and other future clients. It's really not intended to be used in a manipulative kind of way. It's not going to be one of these deals where, hey, if you can really hone in on how your client behaves, this is how you can get them to do something that you want them to do. It's not that at all. Because the client is the one signing their name on the contracts, and so they're the one leading this process to some degree. It's really more about how to read people better. All right, and it really helps us examine our own traits. I'm sure that there are aspects of this business that that are not in your natural personality wheelhouse. Same goes for every buyer and seller out there, right? But we've got to get the job done and move through this process. But I think it will help you self-reflect and understand how you may react in certain situations. Right. And in understanding all these things, it really creates transparency between you and the client, and endears our clients to us more because each one of these has an element of empathy to it. Right. It's really designed to dissolve the us against them philosophy, which I think a lot of agents unfortunately take with their clients. So I'm going to talk a lot about what I would describe as a power trait or a trait that is dominant. And so, what is the difference between a power trait versus just kind of situational behavior? Well, situational behavior, in my opinion, it's a reaction or behavior that reveals itself only in certain circumstances. It's not necessarily a dominant trait all the time. And I'm going to go through examples of these as well. But a power trait is really a behavior that is so strong that it nearly always prevails in every situation and will be a deal breaker for a person. And so that's an important concept to wrap our minds around because some people just can't get past a certain way of behaving. If you are more emotional versus as a client, more emotional versus analytical, then you're going to go about this transaction in a very different way than somebody else, right? So those traits are, in this example, so innate in us that it becomes the dominant way we behave. So let's take this one by one. So power trait number one: people will always take the path of least resistance. All right. So an example might be they want to go see homes without getting pre-approved because that's too much of a hassle, right? I don't want to fill out the paperwork. I just want to go about the fun part of this. And if you tell me that I have to get pre-qualified, that you're going to put up a barrier for me to get to the point that I want to get to. Now, I'm not saying don't enact this policy because I think that's important. I'm just saying that people will always try and do the least amount of effort, right? Maybe they want to text you instead of call or meet you in person. Now, this could kind of overlap into being confrontational averse, but it sure is less work to text somebody versus I got to call them, I got to find their phone number, I got to hope that they answer, and not to mention it takes time to figure out when everyone can meet. So that's a pain. I'm gonna have to worry about traffic, and so you can imagine why it becomes more convenient to text somebody. Another example is they may want to fill out the least amount of paperwork. All right, and so when just the 1-to-4 family residential contract is 11 pages long, not to mention all the other documents that go in with the transaction. That can be problematic, especially on pages where there's nothing to fill in, right? And so my point is that if this is a trait of somebody, then the chance of them glossing over a very important contract are probably going to be pretty high, right? But always remember that people will typically always take the path of least resistance. They want to get to their end result without exerting a whole lot of effort. The last example is cash in lieu of repairs, right? This is a seller's go-to. Inspection report comes back, buyer's agent submits 10 things they want the seller to do. They may have time to do them, they may not. They just don't want to be bothered. And so they just want the problem to go away and they just start writing a check. That's a great example of taking the path of least resistance. All right, so file that one away. That's an important one. The next one is really the basis for all economic theory in this country. People will always act on behalf of their own self-interest. I do it, you do it, your clients do it, sometimes on a very subconscious level. An example might be buyer cuts you out of a deal because he chose a builder and thinks a realtor can't help him. Client goes with another realtor after taking a long break from looking. So why would they ever do that if you think that you've invested all this time and effort with them and the relationship's going good? Because the agent that they chose might be right in front of them, right? And so that's kind of a combination of act on behalf of their own self-interest and take the path of least resistance. The other example, I don't think I included that in here. Yeah, so this is a little bit of what I was going to get to. Clients ask you for a part of your commission or other concessions for lenders, title company, et cetera. So I've seen this happen time and time again as it relates to commissions and builders. An agent will insist that if their buyer client wants to get a home through a builder, that agent is entitled to that 3% commission, right? Which they are. But because other agents will rebate, I have seen this lots of times where that client will sever that relationship and go with somebody else who has agreed to rebate part of their commission, be it from a builder or pre-owned home, doesn't matter. But that's just one example that I've seen a lot. Okay, so you have to realize that this is such a strong power trait in all of us. It's important to realize that it's nothing personal, right? So, because people do this all the time. right? And then the next one is, especially today, and people love to choose sides, right? And you know, specific realtors in the industry, not you guys, but realtors are famous for instigating this, creating an us against them environment. And so an example might be client is projecting their anger onto you, even though they are in the wrong in some certain situation. They just want to pick a side and fight until the end. And so this is why, side note, that the intermediary relationship is never a good one to engage in, right? So if you represent both buyer and seller and are playing intermediary, that is not a good situation to be in, because in the context of representation, you got to choose a side, right? So you got to either choose to advocate for the buyer or the seller. But in this example, what I'm talking about is maybe a realtor that wants to prove their worth and wants to bully the other agent or bully the other principal in the transaction, just for the sake of taking a side at the sacrifice of creating a win-win outcome. Because that is what a real estate transaction should be. One side wants one thing. The seller wants to sell their home for the most amount of money in the least amount of time. Buyer wants to buy that home for the least amount of money and get the most amount of home for it. So from the get-go, there are competing agendas, right? And so sometimes realtors will inflame this kind of personality trait that's just kind of simmering underneath, and kill the deal, right? So example, take your pick: politics, economy, the other agent, the other principal. This can lead to a lack of a win-win scenario. All right, so be mindful of, now that we've gone through three, be mindful of certain things your client is telling you that would lead you to believe that they have one of these traits. Similarly, the other agent. All right, power trait number 4. People want immediate gratification and an immediate response from us. Right? We know this as they are texting us at 11 o'clock at night and expect a response. Right? Example might be, buyer looks on Zillow and asks, why didn't you send me this listing? Another example, they're looking for that unicorn home, right? They want to find it now. They think that everything that they want exists in one home. They want you to create that scenario, and so on. And they expect you to be available 24/7. Now I'm a proponent of flexibility and boundaries, but it always kills me when I hear agents' voicemail say, I'm not available after 5, or if you leave a voicemail on Friday after 5, I'll return it on Monday during normal business hours. That is a lack of what reality is. But just to let you know, some people demand this, right? And so if you are one that gets kind of steamrolled in this area, it may be time for you to evaluate how you're setting those expectations with your client, right? This could absolutely lead to you getting fired. This is the tough love portion of this slide. This could absolutely lead to that. Now, mind you, if you've got more than one client working at a time, that's going to be hard to immediately respond. But you got to tell your client, or all of your clients, that you've got other commitments. This is when I'm typically busy, and commit to a time that you're going to return phone calls, emails, etc. But if you start ghosting them, or if you started in the middle or in the beginning of the transaction just being hyper responsive, and then that kind of slacks off, that could spell trouble, right? So just be mindful of people that have this power trait. All right, people fear losing control. All right, show of hands, who gets the picture reference? Anybody? Yeah. Janet Jackson, Control. All right. So this is a biggie. People fear losing control over a transaction that they have little control over. I mean, how many times have we been in a transaction where the poor buyer loses their earnest money or loses the house because of some mistake or lack of urgency on the part of the lender or the title company? All right, frequent. All right, frequent. So an example might be house didn't appraise. We have zero control over that, right? Loan process hits a snag. Person was told they were qualified one day, you get a week before closing, and that all of a sudden changes. We just, they'll one more document you to do. Inspection came back bad. Right, the home looked great on the outside, but man, I had someone go in there and none of the plumbing works, all the electricity shot, and maybe they keep losing out on deals. Right, I mean, my gosh, 2020 to 2022, this was rampant. I mean, it didn't matter what an agent did. I mean, people were just losing out on deals left and right, and you just couldn't seem to ever figure it out. Right, so just be mindful of this one. This is a good one to kind of preemptively talk through with your client, that there are going to be a lot of aspects about this transaction that you're going to have zero control over. And these are some of these things, but we'll get through it together. All right, the next one is clients will typically be very protective of things that will cause them shame and embarrassment. Right, I do it, you do it, your clients do it. An example might be that they really can't afford the house, or they can't afford as much house as they thought. And this becomes critical when their living situation currently is lousy. So they're running away from something. They want to go get a house only to be told, I can't afford the house I really want. It's in a lousy neighborhood. The school district is lousy. It's got a bunch of stuff wrong with it, and so on, right? But they don't ever want to confess that they can't afford the house. Maybe there are marital issues causing conflict in the transaction. That's very common. One spouse wants the house, one spouse doesn't, or they're just not in agreement on what kind of house, how much, and so on. Maybe they're really divorced and afraid to ask their ex to sign the paperwork. This is common. They had to file for bankruptcy. They've been evicted. Anything that they're afraid to tell you. And I think Jeff's on. And Jeff mentioned this one time that in the context of proving your value and who you are as a realtor, you have to play therapist every now and then. And so that kind of falls into that category. And the number one killer is your credit score is bad, and because that's going to be a deal breaker. And so these are the motivated, but just unable, and will possibly waste your time. And they'll waste your time because they won't tell you up front, or as they're and maybe they don't know. Maybe they get to a lender and things that they thought would just quote unquote go away didn't go away on their credit report, or they need credit repair, and they all of a sudden stop their home search. I can't tell you how often this happens, and the agent is left, arms wide open, thinking, "What did I do wrong?" And 9 times out of 10, you didn't do anything wrong. They've got something in their closet that they don't want to tell you about. All right, and may never. People are prideful. Right, power trait number 7, people hate surprises. And so you didn't alert them to a potential pitfall in the transaction. And, to some degree, this comes with experience, but, if you want to know what could possibly happen within a transaction, just read the contract. There's all sorts of due dates and deliverables, right? And so I always kind of take my foot off the gas in this regard, because I don't want to overwhelm a client with everything that could possibly go wrong, because I'm a guy that is always saying, I'm not going to worry about something until it's time to worry about it. But it is good to maybe tell them 2 and 3 moves forward what is going to happen and what could possibly happen, right? So, day the contract sign, what could possibly happen within that option period? That's enough at that point, right? Then it becomes about the loan process. Then it becomes about the appraisal process. But on day one, within the option period, you don't need to alarm them about the possibility that it won't meet appraisal. All right, that's a down the road conversation. But make no mistake about it, this is our job. We've got to make sure that they understand what's coming down the road. Example, house didn't appraise, right? That shouldn't be a surprise. Bad inspection report, that can just be such a soul crushing experience. And so, you know, even if the house is relatively new and it doesn't appear to have anything, just say that. Just say, this home should not have a lot of issues, but you never know. Until we get the inspection report back, you have no idea what's behind this sheetrock and underneath the foundation. Not saying there's going to be a lot, but that's why we have the inspector go in and take a look. All right. And then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because some things are deal breakers, some things aren't. All right. The next is people have this fear of missing out. An example might be you're in a multiple offer situation. So if you're still shopping in that 3 to 450 price range in a lot of locations, you may be still faced with multiple offers. If your client has never experienced that before or has no idea what that's going to look like, we need to prepare them, right? But this is a very, very common trait in real estate and in life in general. Not enough inventory to look at, right? So that creates an environment of scarcity. And so you may have shown them all the homes that there are out there that meet their criteria and fit their price range and those that they qualify for, but they're always going to wonder, did I miss out on that one that my realtor didn't send me or whatever? Right? And then overall process is just taking too long. Maybe there's some lender issues. This could contribute to a fear of missing out. Right? And this could create a perception that you're causing this. Right? I have had clients that have been under contract and one of the spouses wants to still go look at homes. And I'm like, you can't do that. You're obligated legally to buy this home. This is crazy. But that's a great example of people, having this fear of missing out. And I tell this story all the time. I had a lease client several years ago that no house ever seemed to be the perfect. It was a rental house, and after showing them 40 homes, I pumped the brakes and I said, "Well, how if I asked you how many homes you thought that we've been to, how many would you say?" And they said 20. I said, "Well, why don't you double that number? And out of all that 40, there were 3 that you liked. So you're going to pick one of these 3, or this relationship ends today, because there is nothing else out there." I mean, let's get real. So this is dominant, right? And then lastly, people crave closure and resolution. I mean, how many transactions get to an ugly point because of stuff that may or may not be in the client or yours control, but they just want to be done with it. And then when the transaction closes, everyone's friends again. And there's a reason for that. It's because people, this is a big one for me. I do not like stuff hanging over my head, right? And neither do you, and neither do your clients. An example might be, will the seller accept my offer? Okay, well, once that happens, oh man, that's one milestone. And it just gets worse because there's just one one crossroads after another throughout this entire process. And so you can imagine that people that have an issue here get really beat down by this process because one door closes, but then another one is open again and has to be closed somewhere down the road. Can we coordinate a move in time? What are the lender expectations? What about the appraisal? I mean, all these things are this constant battle of here's the problem, here's the resolution. And so I think you need to play the empathy card here because you can't control any of this. Just tell them it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. Not it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. Because at the end of the day, y'all, there's nothing else you can tell them. Because these are the natural ups and downs of buying or selling a home. There's nothing else you can tell them, especially in the category of I have zero control over what's about to happen. Okay. But these are the 9, all right, of typical dominant traits amongst your clients. And so let's talk about briefly situational behavior. So this is it depends on the situation as to how people are going to react. Okay. People will always pay for convenience. All right. I had this example thrust upon me this week when I took my car to get an oil change. And you think you're going in there for an oil change, but they pull your car in and 5 minutes into it, they come back and say, well, the air filter needs to be changed. And oh, by the way, your wiper blades are getting a little, ratty. Do you want me to replace those? And we recommend that every 30,000 miles, this happens. And so for a while, I would, especially when it came to the air filter and windshield wipers, just say, no, I don't have time to do that today. Or I would tell them I can't afford it today. I'll think about that for next time. Then in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to go to AutoZone, pick up a pair of windshield wipers and an air filter and do it myself. I'll give you 3 guesses as to how many times I've ever done that, and the first 2 don't count. 0. So I just end up having it done because I do not want to be bothered with it. Within reason of how much it costs, right? Now, I'm sure you've all been there, and if people didn't pay for convenience, we wouldn't have valet parking, right? But the more you can create a convenient experience for your client, man, you're going to have a loyal customer, right? And that requires you to think 3, 4, 5 moves ahead and anticipate what's going to happen and how they're going to react to it, right? People just want to be led and for someone to simply handle it. Now, this doesn't apply to everybody. Some people want to lead you, and that's never a good situation because they don't have the expertise. But if people are only moving every 10 or 12 years, they have no idea how this process is supposed to work. And so that's where we come in and lead them and say, in a very approachable way, not a bullying way, okay, this is what's going to happen first, second, third, and fourth. Here are your options. Not, oh, you got to do this. You got to make sure you do this. You got to do this. And if this person does this, you're going to do this. That's the bully approach. I'm just saying that if you naturally lead the process, it's going to make for a much better transaction. Because the more you hesitate and the more you give them forks in the road, the more they're going to doubt you and the more they're going to take control of the process. And again, they have so little control in the process, that is a recipe for disaster. People are confrontational averse. I think this applies to most people. I mean, who doesn't want something to go smoothly? Now, it is in some people's nature to want to over negotiate or establish dominance or prove that they know more than you do. But by and large, people don't want the confrontation. This manifests itself in many different ways. They'll either ghost you, they'll go around your back and do something different, or many, many other ways. Uh, People are horrible at keeping secrets, right? Even, I mean, just other realtors or your clients. Um, Within the transaction, this is kind of where it gets gray because they'll tell you something that they probably don't want you to tell somebody else, but because it's just in our nature, people do, or it's just this is a very uh, interesting trait that sometimes reveals itself at a very inopportune time. But people are typically very bad at keeping secrets. Um, Sometimes people get overwhelmed with choice. And I call this the Home Depot effect because Home Depot is famous for you go in there for a box of nails and you think it's going to be an easy process, but you get in there and you don't know which one to choose, right? And so um, people think that they might want to go see more homes or, and there's other examples here, but um, if confronted with too much choice, many people will just shut down and check out. That's why you have a lot of buyers saying, we are just going to take a break, from you as the realtor and really more so the process, because this has just become a beat down. Okay. Next is people are financially irresponsible. Okay, that's just a fact. People are surprisingly financially irresponsible. You think that someone, that tells you they have a decent credit score, that would be the case, only to find out they've been delinquent in payments for, certain creditors, whatever. Um, People just don't manage their money very well. And, we are in a profession that is supposed to advocate for home ownership, but the reality of people's financial health is that some people just can't because of this obstacle, right? Um, yeah, trying to buy a car while the mortgage is being underwritten comes to mind. Good example, Ryan. This is classic. I mean, once the paperwork's signed, um, they think that they can just write a check for anything now, and they do dumb stuff, right? And so it's that it's you can't manage to pay the electric bill on time. I mean, just various things, right? And not your problem, by the way, not your problem. People are lazy and people lie, right? And so if you're new to real estate, you may not have heard this expression, but I don't like it. But it's kind of an inside joke where realtors will say buyers are liars because there's just so much that has to be done to get a buyer across the finish line that they tend to lie about, thinking that it's just going to all work out, and it doesn't. I don't necessarily believe that to be true, but uh, people will put forth the least amount of effort and they will lie to you, they will lie to their lender, and they'll sabotage the entire process. All right. And look, our time is assigned to a dollar amount, and I would never advocate staying with someone like this, just hoping that it's going to work out, because 9 times out of 10, it does not. Which is a good segue into the next one, which is I know that they don't want to or mean to, but people will take advantage of a situation or a person when it's convenient, right? And so um, people that normally would not, let me tell you a story. When on my first day of college, many, many, many years ago, we were all in a kind of orientation assembly. And the head of the college gets up and says, I want to warn you kids about what I call a thief of convenience. And what he meant is that you don't know anybody here. You're living here now. You're leaving your valuables around. People that normally would not steal from you are going to steal from you because it's easy, right? Oh, and again, that expression, just keep the honest people honest. Or in my case, in my house, keep the honest puppies honest. My dog likes to counter surf and take stuff off the counter. So I'm always telling my wife, let's keep the honest puppies on, let's keep that food off the counter. But it's the same thing, right? People are just so tempted that, so in other words, example, don't offer to rebate the commission just to make the deal work if you don't have to. I mean, if you make an offer like that, people are going to say, well, sure, I'll take you up on that. So did you need to do that in the first place? Maybe not, right? But people will do this. And this overlaps into people will always behave on behalf of their own self-interest, ethical or otherwise. They will always do something that benefits them. People want to do the bare minimum until it really counts, right? So this is famous in this industry. Your clients will, it's no big deal you to death until it becomes a big deal, right? Those pipes being made out of cast iron was no big deal until it became a big deal. That septic system, that's not a big deal. Wait a second. You mean I can't do this, or I have limitations doing that? Oh, well, I don't want the house now. You mean that fence is 2 inches over my yard and the other guy won't move it? Well, I'm not going to take the house, right? So it's amazing what was once never an issue becomes an issue, right? So beware, beware. Only in certain situations. So here's the commonality amongst all these 9 and the list of situational behaviors. If you find solutions, you will never lose a client, ever. Now, some things are out of your control, so you're going to have to play the empathy card, which goes a long way, by the way. But a lot of this you can solve, and a lot of it you can solve by having a conversation preemptively before it even happens, because sometimes it may never happen. But you want to get in front of this process by having solutions, right? And I find that clients will, the process will get derailed on you when the client starts to think, well, you're really not doing anything for me. Like, why am I even in this relationship with you as a realtor when I've told you what I need and you're not helping me find solutions, right? And so all those personality traits play into this. All right, so that was it for my psychoanalysis session today. Anybody have any feedback or comments or stories or questions?
It's like Sam's got somebody's got to unmute.
Hit the wrong button. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry, I'm in my truck today. The NAR stuff with setting the expectation of what the commissions are going to be plays right into this, in my opinion. Just setting the expectation up front. Not like the rally car drivers that have the guy next to them that's saying you got a left coming up. Here's the degree of the turn. This is your next turn. This is what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We give them a map and we can tell them this is what it looks like. But we're in the passenger seat or the driver's seat, depending on the client. And we're telling them you got to get the inspection. It's time for the appraisal. We got to get the earnest money delivered, whatever it may be. You're the one that's calling the shots. So I think setting the expectation.
And I always find that it's always important to, assess what did you know and when did you know it. So if you're, good news never gets bad with age. So if you know something that is material to the transaction or may set your client over the edge, you better tell them now versus later, because that's not good.
Brad, I think the same. I think telling them up front or really digging into their finances, it's setting the expectation, as you all said, but really letting them know, I'm not here to judge you. I mean, tell me everything. I'm going to find out anyway. We got to know this.
Yeah, and also from a lender's perspective, especially, they're in the business to lend people money, not to not lend you money. So
right.
That's why they're asking to figure out a way to make this happen.
Yeah, we want to do what we can to get you approved. Just tell me what's going on, what you're afraid of, and we can assess it once we know.
That's a good one you alluded to that I did not include in there, is that just overall fear of the process, fear of the unknown. That'd probably be a good number 10.
Yeah.
But that's important.
Yep.
You know, I noticed a correlation on a buyer I'm working with right now, and this may just be for this one particular one, but under the no, was it the real AVM? You know, where you go into to
Oh,
look for valuations and things like
yeah.
that. And how they've got that one indicator on there that says how much they're looking at internet sites and things like that. If they have a really high score, like anything over 800, there's probably going to be a whole lot of internet deprogramming that you're going to have to do, because they have a overly confidence in that they know everything about the process. I recently was working with a client that had a score of 952. I've never seen anything that high. So I think they've hit every online source that's out there. And I'm having to do a significant amount of deprogramming to, you know, show them that, yeah, this information you got, it's wrong. But that's a difficult thing to handle tactfully. And it's kind of been liken it to letting your kids stub their toe a little bit, just so that they can convince themselves that maybe their information isn't as accurate.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And you know, everything you read, you know, people throw around that term AI, and AI isn't everything. And you know, Zillow was pioneering that years ago when they put out these valuations of homes that, you know, in Texas really don't mean a whole lot, because it's, you know, you can't get the sales price. So it's a lot of those conversations, especially with analytical types, is debunking the myth that this number is actually accurate. All right, good. Well,
Every,
yeah, go ahead.
everybody's an expert. We got so much social media, it's all the time.
That's right.
Everybody's an expert.
And everyone has their own platform and microphone. So that's the dangerous part.
Yep.
Golly. Well, good. Well, next week is CE from Allegiance Title, and the topic is airship affidavits. And so that'll be an hour. And the following week will be a CE class that will be free from myself. And that'll round out April. But unless it's anything else, we will conclude here. And y'all have a great rest of the week.
You too, Brad. Thanks,
Take care,
guys.
guys.